Welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into a topic that might sound dry at first, but trust me, it affects far more people than you'd expect. We're talking about boundary disputes, those surprisingly emotional disagreements between neighbors about where one property ends and the other begins. Maybe a fence suddenly appears a few inches onto your land. Maybe a new shed pops up right against what you thought was your boundary. Or maybe you've lived somewhere for years and only recently discovered that the official map doesn't match what's on the ground. Boundary disputes can be stressful, awkward, and expensive, but they don't have to spiral out of control. Today, we're breaking down the process step by step so you can handle these situations calmly, confidently, and with a clear plan. What exactly is a boundary dispute? A boundary dispute happens when two or more property owners disagree about the legal dividing line between their land. It might be a few inches. It might be several feet. But even tiny discrepancies can lead to big problems, especially when structures, fences, or access routes are involved. Most disputes start innocently. A homeowner replaces an old fence. A neighbor extends their garden. Someone hires a surveyor and gets a surprise. Suddenly, what seemed like a simple home improvement turns into a disagreement about land ownership. But here's the key, boundaries aren't always as clear as we assume. Older maps can be vague or based on outdated measurements. Natural features like trees, hedges, or streams shift over time. And sometimes, previous owners made informal agreements that were never documented, agreements that don't necessarily hold up legally today. Understanding what a boundary dispute is and why they happen helps you approach the situation with patience instead of panic. You're not alone, and you're not the first person to deal with this. Step 1. Review your documents. The first step in resolving any boundary issue is to gather your paperwork. This includes your deed, your title plan, and any surveys you received when you bought the property. These documents describe your land in legal terms. Sometimes they include precise measurements. Other times they rely on older references like the boundary follows the hedge line or extends to the large oak tree. These older descriptions can be charming, but they're not always helpful when you're trying to figure out where to put a fence in 2025. Here's something important. Title plans often show boundaries in a general way. They're not meant to be exact down to the centimeter. They're a starting point, not the final word. Think of them like a sketch rather than a blueprint. They give you the overall shape, but not the fine detail. If your documents are unclear or contradictory, don't worry, that's extremely common. It just means you'll need to take the next step. Step 2. Talk to your neighbor. Before you jump into legal action or hire professionals, have a conversation with your neighbor. Seriously. A calm, friendly chat can prevent months of stress. Here are some tips for engaging with your neighbor. Stay calm and factual. Bring your documents. Listen to their perspective. Aim for a shared solution. Approach the conversation with curiosity, not accusation. You might say something like, "Hey, I noticed the new fence looks a little different from the old one. Could we look at our documents together?" Most neighbors don't intentionally encroach on your land. They may have relied on old markers, assumptions, or instructions from previous owners. Sometimes they genuinely believe they're in the right. And remember, tone matters. If you go in angry, defensive, or accusatory, the conversation can escalate quickly. But if you approach it as two people trying to solve a shared problem, you're far more likely to reach an agreement. If you can reach an agreement at this stage, you've saved yourself time, money, and a strained relationship. And honestly, maintaining a good relationship with the people living next door is worth far more than a few inches of land. Step 3. Hire a professional surveyor. If the documents aren't clear, or if you and your neighbor still disagree, the next step is to hire a licensed surveyor. This is the person who can give you a precise, legally recognized measurement of your boundary. A surveyor will examine historical records, compare them with modern mapping data, and physically measure the land. They'll then produce a detailed plan showing exactly where the boundary lies. This is often the most reliable way to settle the question. But keep in mind, surveys can still be interpreted differently, especially when older documents conflict with modern measurements. For example, if your deed references a hedge that no longer exists, or a stream that has shifted over time, the surveyor has to interpret how that original description applies today. That's why two surveyors can sometimes produce slightly different results. Still, a professional survey gives you a strong foundation for the next steps. It's objective, it's technical, and it's based on evidence rather than assumptions. Step 4, mediation, legal advice, or formal action. If the dispute continues even after reviewing documents and getting a survey, it's time to bring in a neutral third party. Mediation is often the best next step. A mediator helps both sides communicate, understand each other's concerns, and work toward a mutually acceptable solution. It's far cheaper and faster than going to court. Mediation also keeps the conversation civil. Instead of arguing across the fence, you're sitting down with someone trained to help people find common ground. If mediation doesn't work, you may need legal advice. A property lawyer can help you understand your rights, the strength of your evidence, and the possible outcomes. Court should always be the last resort. It's expensive, time-consuming, and can permanently damage neighbor relationships. But in some cases, especially when land value is significant, it may be necessary. Think of court as the emergency brake, you only pull it when every other option has failed. Common causes of boundary disputes. Let's look at some of the most common triggers for boundary disputes. These include fence replacement, garden extensions, driveway expansions, tree or hedge growth, misinterpreted title plans, long-term informal agreements. Sometimes the issue isn't the boundary itself. It's the assumption about the boundary. A fence might have been placed incorrectly decades ago. A hedge might have grown over the line. Or a previous owner might have said, "Yeah, that's fine," without documenting anything. These situations can create what feels like a new normal, even if it doesn't match the legal boundary. When a new owner moves in and checks the documents, the discrepancy suddenly becomes a problem. Another common cause is simple misunderstanding. Many people assume that the fence automatically marks the boundary, but that's not always true. Fences can be moved, replaced, or built in the wrong place, preventing future disputes. The best boundary dispute is the one that never happens. Here's how to prevent issues before they start. Communicate before building. Keep updated surveys. Document agreements in writing. Use permanent markers. Maintain fences and hedges. Before you put up a fence, plant a hedge, or build a shed, talk to your neighbor. Share your plans. Show them your measurements. A 5-minute conversation can prevent a 5-month argument. If you agree on a boundary, put it in writing. Even a simple signed note can prevent future confusion. It doesn't have to be a formal legal document, although that's even better if the issue is significant. And if you're buying a new property, consider getting a fresh survey. It's a small investment that can save you huge headaches later. Another tip, use permanent markers. Surveyors often place metal pins or stakes underground. These markers can help future owners avoid repeating the same dispute. Final thoughts. Boundary disputes can be frustrating, but with the right approach, they're absolutely manageable. Start with your documents, talk to your neighbor, get a professional survey, and use mediation or legal advice only when necessary. Remember, the goal isn't to win, it's to resolve the issue in a way that protects your property, your peace of mind, and ideally your relationship with the people living next door. If you found this breakdown helpful, hit that like button, subscribe for more homeowner and property insights, and drop your questions in the comments. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.